Sit quiet while we disconnect the last video, please. Right, welcome to council members to today's August council meeting. Welcome to members of the public watching via the live stream, and to our Westroads board and chief executive, welcome. We will start this afternoon's meeting with the karakia, and I will hand over to Whaipuwhiri Tumahai for that purpose.
Whakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te kauma. Kia mā kinikina ki uta, kia mā taratara te tae. Ahi ki ana ki atakura, te io, te tohu, te ora, te ewa.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on to apologies, we have an apology from our Chief Executive, Barbara Phillips, and of course we have our Chief Financial Officer, Stephen Lewis, as our Acting Chief Executive during this time. Councillor Walker will be joining us in due course, and we have Councillors Munns and Gillette in attendance via Zoom, so welcome guys, good to see you here. Can I have a move and second, please, and we resolve that the apology be received and accepted, please. Thank you, Councillor Maitland. Thank you. That is all in favour. Declarations of interest. The members' interest paper is being circulated again, but if anyone has any conflicts to declare, whether perceived or actual, with relevance to the agenda items in the public section of today's meeting, they could please so declare now before we proceed any further. I'll take that response as negative.
Hello, yes, Paul Elwell Sutton here.
You're sure about that one?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is what we
yes,
told
yeah.
you before. Okay, thank you. We have no urgent items to cover on the agenda, so we'll move forward to the public forum and welcome Mr. Elwell Sutton from Haast, who has requested some time to speak to Western District Council about their procurement policy. Welcome, Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Good. Welcome, Paul. We will hand over to you. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes to speak to the item, whereupon we will then have any questions relative to your content. So the floor is yours.
Okay, so the purpose of my call is to ask the council to decline from doing any business with businesses listed by the United Nations to be involved in committing human rights abuses in Palestine, and namely involved in the genocide of the Palestinian people by Israel. Now, so the idea behind that is that ratepayers' money should not be complicit in the genocide and the violence occurring in Palestine at the moment. Now, I sent a couple of emails, one on the 16th and one on the 26th of this month, to the mayor and councillors, outlining the proposal that I have, together with supporting documents attached. And I hope that at least some of you have read it, read that email and the documents attached. Several local and regional authorities in New Zealand have already committed to declining to deal with the businesses listed by the United Nations as being involved in those human rights abuses. And this is a matter for local authorities and regional authorities to decide, but as the Auditor General in New Zealand has established that it's not really up to the central government to decide that. It is up to local and regional authorities, and those authorities are listed in the email that I sent. I don't think they... Oh, yeah, so New Zealand has supported all resolutions by the United Nations not to take part in the genocide. So we know that New Zealand the New Zealand central government is supportive of measures to avoid supporting businesses that are involved in that genocide. So councils will not be stepping out of line by avoiding any sort of procurement or investment with any of the businesses listed in that list. And most of them are actually Israeli, but there are a few prominent international ones, including Expedia, Airbnb, and Booking.com. Anyway, I invite you to study the list. So that's all I have to say at this stage. I'll take any questions.
Is there any questions for Paul, please? Councillor Maitland.
Yeah, thank you, Paul and Councillor Maitland. I fully support what you're doing here in regards to the genocide in Palestine. Already our ratepayers have been heavily impacted by the actions of Israel, especially in the Strait of Hormuz and the surrounding Middle East countries. Yeah, my question to you is, do you think that Rocket Lab should be included on that list of people to do business with?
Which place? Which place did you say?
Rocket Lab.
Can I just remind councillors that questions have to be relevant to the discussion,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Did you say Westland?
Rocket Lab.
Sorry, the line is terrible. Sorry, I can't hear.
Okay. Yeah, no, they produce satellites that the IDF use for surveillance.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. You know, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, you're talking about the launching of military satellites from Mahia Peninsula. Yeah, for the U.S. military, which are involved in targeting civilians in Gaza. Yes, of course we should not be. We shouldn't be allowing those launches to take place from our country.
Can I just please remind councillors that clarifying questions, please don't get off topic. Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, I think the topic at hand is the procurement policy of the council, and yes. I don't think we buy any rockets from Rocket Lab. No. Why not?
And also, I think it's just a reminder that council's stance is to not get involved in international relations and politics. That sits within the remit of the central government, not local.
That's actually not true.
I'm not going to debate it here, Mr. Sutton, Mr. Sutton, sorry. Clive Harry, Medgewick.
Yeah, through worship. So what's happened in Gaza is horrible. And it's an absolute, in my view, it's an absolute blight on humanity. No, before you grab your gavel.
Well, I am after questions. Yeah, this is not the time for discussion.
I'm not. It's not a question. It's a comment, and I'm going to make the comment today. That, however, it is a slippery slope for local government to get dragged into to politicising something of that nature. I don't believe it's the role of local government at all. I don't see any distinction between that and the calls for banks to not deal with coal miners, for instance. You know, we don't agree with that, but you know, we're not about to put in a procurement policy about that either. So I don't agree with it. But having said that, what's happening in Gaza is the most disgusting blight on humanity that I've experienced.
Thank you for that. Are there any further comments, please, for Paul Sutton, please, before we close this part of the meeting? Councillor Maitland.
Through the chair, I'd like to formally request discussion on this at a later date at a council meeting.
We can note that. Okay. Right. Thank you, Mr. Earl Sutton, for taking the time out to talk to us today. It's greatly appreciated. I hope the weather's better down there in Haas to what it is here today.
Oh, we're used to the weather, so we're okay.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for your time, Paul. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Right, thank you everybody for that. Moving on to minutes of meetings, we have the ordinary council meeting minutes of 23rd July 2026 and the extraordinary council meeting minutes of the 3rd of August 2026. Are there any matters, any points to note from those minutes before we resolve to pass them as a true and correct record of the meeting? No matters arising, I'll take it then. Can I have a move and a second to please resolve that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held 23rd July 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting, and the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on 3rd of August 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. Move and second, please. Thank you, councillor.
Your worship, they they're on part 5 of the extraordinary minutes. Number 5, council notes that if council approves the recommendation, that's what's in the minutes. Should that not be government to do with the start application? Page 13, sorry, of the extraordinary minutes.
Approves the recommendation, commits the detailed. Council approves the recommendation. Commits detailed. I know exactly what you're saying, but it actually doesn't read incorrectly. It's depending on whether you're reading it from the government perspective or ours, because we still have a role to play in the recommendations as well. Because we will have to recommend that we commence the detailed design phase. So if the government approves the recommendation, that is then for us to recommend that we commence the detailed design phase. It's got to come through council. So I think that's really what that's referring to there. But I
Question to remove the council.
Councillor's
That
notes.
is approve the recommendation.
Yes, we could just take the word council out and have council notes that if approved, the recommendation.
Yes.
We don't need.
Yes. So is everybody happy if we take the word council out of that sentence? Council notes that if approved, not approves, comma, the recommendation is,
Yeah.
after councillor.
Apologies.
It was noted that you would be arriving in due course, and Sam's got that recorded at your arrival, so thank you. Councillor, we're just approving the minutes, and Councillor Martin has just brought up a question on page 13. Just the wording of council notes that if council approved the recommendation, which was saying it should be council notes that if approved, the recommendation is to do with the local government reform. So is everybody quite happy with that change? I think it does read better there anyway. That way.
Yes, I'm happy to, through the chair, on the Head Start part of the agenda, it was strongly emphasised at the end of that discussion that we would only move forward if the financial stacked up. Well, I think that needs to be emphasised in the minutes. It sort of basically says that anyways, but I don't think it says it strongly enough.
I think it defines that with what we've actually approved and agreed to.
Yeah, it does, but I think there was myself and another councillor actually emphasised that towards the end of that discussion.
Yep, so with this discussion on the minutes, it's only the correctness of the minutes that we can rediscuss, not a change to the minutes. So councillor Martin has brought up as a correction as to the word council or not, whereas that's not a correction, that's a addition.
I think just to clarify, Councillor Maitland, that is very clearly outlined in the proposal. So it's in the proposal very heavily that we wouldn't go ahead. It's in the proposal. I don't know that it needs to be reflected in a minute. I mean, it is noted there that but it is in the proposal.
I kind of would agree with councillor Maitland, and while the minutes don't need to catalogue everything that's said, there was quite a detailed discussion about section 77 of the Local Government Act, which I brought up. None of that is mentioned in the minutes at all.
We don't capture every conversation that's held at the council table. It's a summarisation. The paper was before us and we signed off on all the applicable parts of that paper and what we had to agree to and record. So there will always be something that somebody may feel we could have included. But I don't think that denotes to correctness of the minutes. I think that denotes to an addition of information to the minutes as opposed to a correctness. And Councillor Burdon is quite correct. It's really is summarised in there. It's just not explicit in that exact wording.
In regards to that, I noticed in the assurance and procurement meeting that was held earlier in the month, that a similar situation where it was doubly emphasised as to what was discussed in that meeting was actually put into the discussion floor. So it was something where something was already agreed to, but it was doubly emphasised.
Yeah.
And this is a similar situation.
I get what you're saying, but we've also got to be relative to what the report, what the decision was about. So it was about the Head Start paper and what we were approving and the conditions that sat with that, not the content of the discussion. It's what we have to record. Council notes the proposal seeks government and NSET specialist support and coordination. Council notes the approval does not establish a unitary authority. There's all the things that we have to recognise in that paper. It's not the content of the discussion that's in here. It's what we had to record as far as what we were sanctioning versus not. We had to make it crystal clear what we were agreeing to within that. So, yes, I mean, if we start to include every bit of conversation to the degree that everybody would like, we're going to have a very long record of minutes, but that wasn't applicable to what we had to have recorded and what we had to advise Wellington on.
But for me, it's only basically four words, subject to one action.
Well, I think we would have to go back with the wording of that to be agreed to. And I think, as Councillor Burdon said, and as I mentioned before, I think that was actually covered quite thoroughly in it anyway. I'll take the segment of the table, but otherwise we will move on and approve the minutes. So everybody quite happy to approve the minutes?
Yeah, I'll approve.
All right, so moving on then, the resolution is, as I noted before, the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on 23rd of July 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting, and the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on 3rd of August 2026 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. With the amendment to the 5th resolution from council notes that if council approved the recommendation with the amendment to the 5th resolution from council notes that if council approves the recommendation, it'll be amended to if approved, council will. Are you happy with that amendment, councillor? Thank you. So move for a second on that, councillor Manera. Do I take your mover on that? Thank you. Do I have a second? Councillor Bevan, thank you very much. I approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed council meeting minutes with that. And then we move to the committee minutes to be received from the Risk and Assurance Committee minutes of 7th of May 2026. The resolution is that the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting held on 7th of May 2026 be received. And I will be, thank you very much, councillor. I have a seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Manera. Right, all in favour to the minutes all being received, I accept it. Thank you. Action list. And I will hand over to Stephen, Chief Financial Officer, Acting CE, to speak to that list, please.
Your worship. So there is only 1, 2, 3, or 5 outstanding items on the action list at the moment. So item 5 related to Lake Canary, there's a report from staff at today's agenda. Freedom Camping is noted, it'll come back to council at November's meeting. Item 11, which is the Kamara Endowment, there's a report from staff at today's meeting, so that will be covered off. And similarly, we have West Roads here for West Roads Statement of Intent, so that will also be covered off. Final item is changes to staff numbers. Staff are working on the reports and that will be presented at September's council meeting.
Thank you, Stephen, for that. Any questions? No. Resolution is that the updated action list from the Chief Financial Officer be received and those items completed be removed from the list, otherwise presented at the next council meeting. I'm moving a seconder, please. Councillor Martin and Councillor Burnham, got those. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Right, presentations. We have no presentations for today's meeting. Next on the list is, oh goodness, sorry, is this my report. It's the busy month. This month's been busier, and it's going to get busier again. I will note that the engagements with the communities throughout Westland attended by councillors, and I thank those councillors that did give the time to attend those community meetings. It was greatly appreciated, and it was good to get right down into and as far down as Haas to meet with the communities. The findings from the work done in those meetings will be presented to council at the workshop that's coming up. Yeah, so are there any questions regarding my report? Oh, sorry, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, through the chair. I noted that you had a committee meeting about TTPP. Is there anything you can update us on, given Shane Jones's petition to Minister Bishop about causing it?
That came up before the TTPP meetings. The TTPP meetings at the moment, we're going through some are hearings, some are just work programs. With the hearing discussions we have, if we're an appellant, we can't attend. Thankfully for Westland, we weren't an appellant in many of them, which has given us the ability to sit in on some of the other discussions that still do have an impact on us. As far as Minister Jones's comment, my response to the media has been, while that's fine, who's going to recompense the West Coast for the potentially 12 million to date? That could balloon to 15 mil. The other thing is that our district plan has been moved to make way for the TTPP. So it's not easy to just throw that one out and what we do to manage ourselves going forward, because we still do have to have alignment with Ray and Buller with this. So, and I know the TTPP format or one plan has now been implemented or starting to be implemented in other areas around the country, but it's easier for them to stop with where they are, but it's not so easy for us. I do accept that the implications from the TTPP are significant in our backyard, and I don't agree and support a lot of the content of it. But yeah, I've got more questions than I've got answers as far as Mr. Jones's comment on that, because it does impact on us significantly by financially and impact of our planning. So the RMA reform does override our TTPP. I know when they started the first discussions with the TTPP, there was an urgency on getting it through before the RMA reform came out, because it was indicated to everybody involved that it wouldn't impact decisions made on the TTPP, but it does. So the RMA reform, the findings from that, what's to be implemented for that will override, supersede then what's been discussed already and set in place. So more cost as well, unfortunately. Yeah. So, hope we're hearing me. Pleasure.
Through your worship. So going back maybe about 3 years ago on the TTPP committee, we were given a choice to pause it then because of the impending or the certain changes to RMA Act, or to box on and hope for the best. And the decision was that we were convinced of was to box on. We were assured at the time that the change of the RMA would be compatible, basically, and so that's why it was decided to carry on. And as it transpires, it's not. So it was a mistake. But it was a gamble that was taken at the time, but we just had to take the advice.
The implications of it are significant. It is what it is, but we will have to see where it goes. But you know, it's the cost of what we've had to pay for everything's been rated on thus far. That, you know, we have to make sure that that we're recompeting for that. It's certainly not a cost that we can incur and take the weight of. But
It's incurring a cost every day still.
it is. It does. And just an example on that, I mean, and councillor Maitland sits with me on that, and we've opposed the noise 3 bit of legislation. While Hokitika is exempt from the impact of what that means as far as the railway, Grey isn't. Grey is not exempt, so it's impacted, and it impacts their communities, all the restrictions with it. So we have, we've made a stand against it, and that will potentially drive it to the Environment Court, more cost. But do you avoid the cost and the burden on the ratepayers, or do you fight for common sense? That's, I mean, the ruling is going to impact the hospital, the housing, the CBD of Grey, and all the communities outside of that. So they can't appeal it because they're the appellants. We aren't, we can fight. But this is the sort of thing that we're working through, and it's just nonsensical. It really is. I mean, the commercial impact on Grey is phenomenal with it. So we have to push back and try and get things sorted and dealt with in the correct way. If we could roll it back and do it again, knowing what we know now, it would be great. But unfortunately, it's not in our hands. Yep.
Chair, is there any way after the election to sit down as a council and work out the strategy with the other councils to get money back, or?
Get some money back. Well, it's going to come down to a decision of the government as to whether they put it in the touch or not, but it will certainly have to be a conversation that we collectively have and drive.
All councillors signed to it, and they can't really ignore it.
Well, I don't think they could ignore the beast anyway. If they want to put it in the bin, they cannot expect our ratepayers to bear the cost of that. So, and everybody's already been rated on it. So, yeah. And how that's managed, I don't know, but it would have to be done. But yes, we will have to address that once we know when that's going.
Because there are some good things in that thing, and then just pausing it means they're still going to give effect to it. So we don't lose anything by it, but we just stop any more wastage. Until we know what's going on.
And that would be the common sense thing to do, but common sense is development, so unfortunately. Right, if there's no further questions on my report, can I have somebody to move and second that the report be received? Councillor Mackenzie, thank you very much. Second. Councillor, take it back. Councillor Maitland. Right, thank you for that. Moving on to staff reports, and we now invite West Roads to the table. Thank you, team. The statement of intent. Gentlemen. Mr. Pangwell. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you.
And actually, do you want to introduce yourself to Councillor? Sorry, none.
Thank you.
I'll hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Your Worship, councillors, officers, thank you for having us along today to present the 2026-2027 statement of intent. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Clark Butcher, CEO of West Roads. Clark's been with us transitioning from mid-May, officially on board from mid-June. And so he is auxiliary in Greymouth now. Engineer by qualification, and from the coast originally by birth. So we're going to say it all. You said it all. And we've also got deputy chair and chair of the audit and risk, Rob Caldwell as well. Thank you very much. So this document's been through the CCO Oversight Committee, so I won't go through it page by page in this meeting, but I will note specific items. One item that got raised in the CCO Oversight Committee was in regards to division of values under point 2 on page 4. So Clark, do you just...
Yep, so since I've started, there's been reasonably significant change to the leadership structure. And so we've initiated a refresh on our values, and we'll be looking to shape our organisational culture going forward around ideas of be hungry, humble and smart as a contractor. That won't be the values, but yeah, that'll be that's the idea.
So we're working through that. That'll come through as a refresh in next year's SOI, and we'll keep you up to date as that progresses. In regards to point 5 governance, Ross Pickworth down as a director is concluding his tenure at the AGM in October, which you are all invited to. And then the board will be back to 4 directors. So it's been good having Susie and James on board. They're transitioning well, and they've gained a lot of experience over that time in regards to the business specifically, which means that it will just be BAU from a governance perspective. So thank you for the 2 appointments last year. In regards to performance targets, I just note those on page 10 under item 6. They cover both financial performance targets and social performance targets. So that is in regards to attracting and retaining the best people for our organisation, high level of transparent, effective communication, etc., supporting local community initiatives, and the wider benefits of having a CCO provided. Point 7, health and safety, always top of the agenda for a contracting company looking after our people. Clark?
Again, coming on board, we're undertaking a safety refresh over the next 5 to 6 months, which will include a review of our critical risks, our engagement approach in terms of PCBU relationships with our clients, and refresh and rethink around our golden rules to ensure that they're up to spec for the market we're operating in.
And of course, we're also aware of the changes under the health and safety legislation. So from a governance perspective, we keep an eye on that as well. Point 9, relationships, important to us, particularly in regards to engaging with council and mana whenua as well, including takiwa, and operationally, Clark.
Yeah, so again, we're building relationships broadly, coming in with a fresh team to build relationships with our stakeholders and organisational relationships across the regions that we operate in, including Coast and Canterbury.
Under point 15, we have the reporting to shareholders. So that's on page 15 of the report. Draft statement of intent, completed statement of intent, half yearly report, annual report, the budget, and the quarterly report timings are listed there in line with legislative requirements. And the final comment I'll make before we take questions, welcome questions, is on financials. So I'll take the financials read under note 17. The performance to January was acceptable from a Westroads perspective, but February saw a rapid deterioration in clients putting work to market due to the cost uncertainty related to fuel and supply chains. Westroads' profit subsequently deteriorated materially. We've made significant organisational changes during that time, which Clark being one of them, and he's referred to a couple as well. Tenders are now returning to the market, and we believe that they're closer to the business as usual state right now, with July's results showing that as well. And I welcome questions.
Thank you, Mark, for that. Questions, please. Yes, Councillor Walker.
Through the chair, those are accounting questions, Steve.
I've got to share it.
I might have missed something, apologies if I have. So your end of financial year closing shareholder funds was 12.552 million. On page 43, 17 financials, right?
That's your forecast page.
Financial forecast, number 17, you got closing shareholder funds, but then if you add up your budget 26-27, you got 11,685, and you take away the 2 current period, the net profit loss after tax and the current period dividends. There's about $1.2 million difference in those figures. So you ended one year with 12.5 and you started the next year with things like 11.4.
These are budgeted figures, so that's the previous year's budget.
Yeah.
It's not where we actually ended the year. So we've reforecast the starting point.
So that's 12
year.
Got it.
So so in terms of, we're showing you what it looked like when we forecast it last time.
Right.
And then we're starting with a new forecast this time. So they're not going to
Line up
line up the way you're talking.
Okay. So that SOI budget isn't actually the final figure, that was just what was in the budget from the previous.
That's right.
Right.
It's not the final upturn for the year. It's reactivity. We're still working through that.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was a figure I was missing.
Okay.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, so from these financials, is it estimated that delivers the council 400,000 for that stuff?
And plus 200,000.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Plus 200,000 as subvention payment.
Okay, when do we get money?
We'll be looking at that November.
Yeah, and then again in February, March.
So that's this year. And it'll be based on where we sit from a cash position at that point.
Thank you.
So the subvention payment is a transfer between a profitable business unit within the wider council group to a loss-making one. So that's the reason for subvention payments. So as long as we're tracking profitably, we can do that. And then the dividend is the business distribution. So what is the total value? Is 602,000.
Any further questions?
Sorry, through the chair, just to clarify, these are budgets, forecasted budgets.
Yeah.
But if you're starting the 2026-27 year at 1.2 less than what you forecasted for 25-26, so how does that get? It doesn't seem like that's gonna,
So-
because every other year lines up perfectly except for that one.
Well, they will because they're forecasts. So the budget that we proposed, that we're showing you, the budget from last year.
Yeah.
It's not where we ended up.
Yeah.
At the end of the year. So you can't use that as a starting point.
Yeah.
For the 26-27 year. If that's what I think that's what you're looking at.
Because you've done that for every other year, you've used it. Yeah.
Because they are future forecasts, so they will follow.
Okay.
Because it's like the next year is a budget, the year, 2 years after that are forecasts.
Yeah.
You're comparing last year's budget with a forecast for this year, but our outturn was not exactly on budget, so the starting point will always be different.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
I did, Stephen.
No,
Yes.
no, that's fine. I mean, yeah.
Any further
And in
questions?
fact, looking at that, I just realised I was looking at the wrong column. So the budget for next year for dividend is 150,000. That was the 400,000 was the 25-26 budgeted one. So it's the 150 plus the 200,000, so it's 350,000 budgeted at this stage.
Remember.
That would be looking at.
Councillor Maitland, did you have a question?
Yes, please, through the chair. In your budget forecast, what aspects of the future do you base those forecasts on in regards to the business?
And so we have the existing contracts we have, so whether that's the long-term maintenance contracts for road and water parks and reserves. We have secured workload as well that we forecast through. Then we take an historic perspective to look at what's been happening. We take current market conditions as well and have to make an estimation on what's going to happen. There's always unknown factors in there that can influence that, and that's why it's budget. We reforecast after 3 months. We do a 3+ reforecast internally, and then 6+6, and then we track it for the last 6 months to see where we're going. So there's some science and some art to it.
Right. So with the upcoming joint authority on the West Coast, that's been taken into account with West Coast.
So in regards to the water,
Both really, water and.
So the water contracts we have through until 2027 for both Grey and Westland. We've had an engagement with the CCO audit committee that was water board, so it was set up. So we've started those discussions. And then from there, we're having discussions about the pension implications for our nation, which.
And in those discussions, would you be faced with any competition from people like Downer and other big companies like that? Or would you?
We have the contracts at the moment, I think we have the track record and got the people, so we anticipate we'll look to competitively win those and make a positive return to the community.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. With the uptick in mining, are you pushing yourselves out there to these mining companies to try and get contracts that way and use you've got all the equipment already, so.
Spot big mining, so somebody gets, well, that's really spot big, do you want to talk?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're reviewing all the markets that we are in. Mining generally uses a different category of plant equipment that we don't currently have because it's not generally used in terms of general civil construction or roading related tasks. So that would be a slight adjustment in our approach, but yes, it is something that we're considering.
I guess you've also got the human capital, so you could rent out drivers and digger operators, not just the machinery.
It's best to have the people and the machinery working on our jobs.
Well, I've done with you.
No, yeah, absolutely. I guess one of the broader contexts for an uptick in mining is that it provides more work around the economy, which means that there's less hunger to hunt for work. So there's more work evenly spread around, which means everyone can feed themselves appropriately, which is always beneficial. So if the general uptake in the economy, that will be positive, noting that there is often an offset in wage costs and competition for that labour resource as well. So there's always pressure on wage rates going up. So but we like to see a buoyant economy that will be positive for Westroads.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, and it is, and through the there's improved relationship that you have with council and the interactions we have, it's, you know, we do know that they are monitoring markets and opportunities, etc., continuously. And that's, yeah, that's really good, and it's good having you on board too, Clark. So, brilliant. So, are there any further questions for any of our Westroads representatives that are here with us this afternoon? Stephen and Janella, I haven't forgotten looking for you guys, see if there's anything.
No, I don't have any questions. I made some comments about the values statement in the current statement of intent. And I get the impression that that will be addressed, but I do have some ideas that I could forward through, just a bit more positive and aspirational.
Happy for that to happen. Yeah. All right, thanks, Stephen. So if there's nothing further for our Westroads team, I'll have to move to executive, please, and we can resolve that the report be received. The council adopt the Westroads statement of intent for 2027, and that council directs staff to make the statement of intent available on the Western District Council website within 1 month of this date for a period of no less than 7 years. Can I move to a seconder, please? Councillor Manera, Councillor Vernon, thank you. All in favour? Karen, thank you. And thank you, gentlemen, for your time this afternoon. Thank you. Back over the help.
Thank you.
I've got something to borrow. Thanks, guys, very much for that.
Thank you.
Time. Right, we now move on to the Lake Canary Water Quality Testing Report, and welcome Earl to the table. And I think we've got Johnny here from the West Coast Regional Council. Johnny Moritz, sorry everybody, West Coast Regional Council representative here with us this afternoon. So, gentlemen, I'll hand over to you firstly, Earl, and Shanti, is she joining us?
No.
Not
She
by Zoom?
provides her apologies. She's been up all night with things.
Yeah,
She
I
has been.
appreciate it. Sorry, I'm going to sleep myself. Okay.
Thank you, Worship and councillors. I'll take the report as read. The reason the report has come to council as previous request by the public and again by council around November last year. We were seeking further information on water quality in the lake, and there was some public concern, and the council are concerned around what the lake quality water was like. As it says in the report, Western District Council is not responsible for monitoring that lake. However, we do have an interaction with building consents and with our brothers up the road at Regional Council. So Johnny here was undertaking a
review of water quality up around Lake Canary. And he's here to answer questions today on the report. He's the principal scientist at the West Coast Regional Council. So thank you for tuning in.
Right, any questions for Earl on the report or for Johnny? I'll go up to Councillor Gillett first. Councillor Gillett.
Yes, through your worship. I just need clarity that this report addresses the concern that was raised. I just need to understand this testing was performed on streams and waterways entering the lake. And our concern was the long-term safety of the septic tanks that exist from the old dwellings there. So are you saying in this report that the mechanism that would allow any leakage from these existing septic tanks into the lake would be through the waterways that you perform these tests on?
Okay, so are you curious to know the difference maybe between groundwater pathways and surface water pathways? Is that part of what you're interested in?
Well, I just need clarity on why with the mechanisms you tested, they capture the leakage or potential leakage from septic tanks in the future.
Okay. So I don't have any information on the nature of individual septic tanks out there. Obviously, there's some old ones and there's some newer ones. We're not either privy to the maintenance schedules. One of many assumptions might be that the tanks could leak via groundwater, or maybe on rare occasions or periodically, if there were tanks there that had issues, that there might be a surface discharge or maybe a very short pathway, groundwater pathway, where the contaminants wind up going from the disposal field to a surface drainage network. I suppose that was one of the assumptions we made. Hence, we focused on any drains we could find and sampled them when they were flowing, and bearing in mind that we only went out there, maximum 8 times. So we went out there all the time. We didn't have any instruments out there that were measuring continuously. You can't measure E. coli continuously because you have to send the samples to a lab, unlike other things you can measure continuously. So plenty of limitations, but you can't measure groundwater pathways, bacteria in groundwater unless you have wells and things like that put down specifically to intercept those kinds of contaminants like E. coli and pathogens. So it was really our best guess based on what we could measure easily and what would be the most logical pathways if there was any contamination from septic tanks. And of course, we wanted the farm drains and the forested streams in the mix as well, just as reference, because I think they do provide quite a useful reference. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So the instructions that were provided to you from our council, what were they exactly? I'm just trying to understand if they, as I said, did capture the concern that we had as councillors and the potential risk in the future of that situation there.
Through the chair, I'd just like to recognise that we didn't get any instruction. This operation was already planned and underway at the time of discussions. And also that, inherently, round folding septic tanks are designed to leach into the waterways, and not necessarily to drinking waterways, but they're designed to leach into the ground. So that is how they work. So you're always going to get leakage.
So, Johnny, can I determine from that, following on from Councillor Gillett, that if there was contamination getting into the water, that your test would detect that anyway?
Yeah, the assumption was that if there was, you've got your slope and your drains intercept a lot of that urban drainage. The finer points of where every tank, slopes and directions of that, we're not sure of, but we tried to measure every drain that serviced or, a large proportion of those trains that service that urban area. So the assumption would be that if there was anything that was failing, any tanks that were failing significantly, that during some of those wet events, we might intercept some contamination. Of course, there's a whole bunch of variability in here. There's the, it's intermittent with the flow of those drains, and it's generally rainfall related, but also the, what I understand, the occupancy of a lot of those dwellings is quite intermittent as well. So there might be times where there are issues there that could be occurring, but we didn't pick it up with those tests and those trips out that we made and collected samples. So, if you did 20 times more sampling and focused maybe all around that summer period, that would be a better study than the one that we did. But this is a pretty modest study just to try and get the ball rolling to see if there was anything obvious and significant. And from the modest sampling we did thus far, there was nothing obvious or significant within the limitations of that particular study.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. So, firstly, it's a bit disappointing to hear that there's been no communication between this council and the regional council as to what our concern was, because Councillor Brett's quite right. Our concern was particularly about the septic tanks seepage possibility, which we wanted to, and the age of those septic tanks, and the intermittent occupation, which has an effect on the operation of septic tanks. That's what we wanted covered, and we asked for it twice. I raised it again at the last meeting when a report was brought back to us from the management, and it didn't address that, and I asked for it specifically to go back to the regional council to ensure that that report covered off about the septic tanks, and now we hear that it didn't. That communication didn't happen, so that's disappointing. But this is, I agree with Johnny. This, it's a start. This is a start. This is what we need. We need evidence. We need science evidence on this to make sure that we do address any issues. But it's a start, but it's certainly not the end. And so I would like to see that this now kicks off some regular testing, that we go back and through the regional council, we ask the regional council to look specifically about the septic tanks issue here, and what is the regional council's policy about ageing septic tanks generally. I don't think that the regional council just accepts they're just there till the batch owner or whatever decides to upgrade to something else. So there must be some sort of check, and so I think these things do need to be explored deeper. But as I say, it's a start, but it's not the end.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Maitland at centre.
Thank you. Through the chair. Johnny, I see in the medium report of E. coli that there were 2 in the red zone, got as high as the red zone, and there was 4 in the amber zone. And basically, there was very few testing done to get that sort of information. But it does show that there are points where the E. coli levels actually get quite high. I was surprised that surface drains were used for the test results. Like there could have been birds and dogs or anything around that could have influenced that. But as has been just stated, it's the septic tanks, especially tanks that become anaerobic because they're used, not so often. That's where the danger lies. And I would have thought it may have been more prudent to actually test the lake water that faced where the buildings were, rather than the drains, to maybe get a different picture there in that regard. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point about the birds and the dogs and What have you. So if you do measure high E. coli in a drain, it might not be from people. That probably wasn't emphasised maybe well enough in the area. But we do measure the lake from November weekly to March, and we measure Hans Bay. 2 sites on Hans Bay. And the results there have been consistently excellent. So that's pretty promising. So I guess we're trying to work our way back to potential sources, which is always going to get more and more hit and miss and less relevant to measuring in the lake where people actually swim. But the lake bathing beach monitoring program has consistently generated positive results. There's no problems there. So that's, and we'll be doing that this summer. So we have a good record there, and we're going to continue with that monitoring. And that'll be useful.
In regard to E. coli, would you say, like, the capacity of it, in a sense, is a safety sort of aspect to E. coli because of the fact that it's so big and there's not enough food in there to feed the E. coli? So that would act as a buffer, to say that. Or
Expelling virtues of dilution always sounds terrible, but it's a real thing and can be of real benefit. These lakes, large lakes like Brunner and it's a big lake, it's 200 metres deep. It has enormous capacity. When anything comes into that lake, it'll be diluted. I couldn't give you figures, but it's substantial, orders of magnitude. So yes, that is a factor. Useful factor. And E. coli, as you say, I mean, you're like a lake is like a giant oxidation pond. The E. coli, it'll die over time anyway because it's not in its favourite place, which is the gut of a lot of animals. And E. coli is a proxy as well. So itself, it's not really a pathogen. It's a proxy for the pathogens that come along with it. But if you've got high E. coli, then you would assume you might have high things like Campylobacter, just to make that clear. But it'll die with cold water. It'll be irradiated by the sun. It has high clarity and things like that. So before it can get to a person, it's diluted, which gives you immediate lower levels, which is what we've been measuring thus far with bathing beach monitoring. When you have an event where you might have higher E. coli coming in after rainfall, which is what we've seen happen, then the E. coli is going to sit in your lake and the sun and time will kill it. So yeah, you're right.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Brian's first actually.
I was just going to say, you test water at the pump station, don't you? Before it comes to us, so.
Yes. And it gets treated after it's from the lake.
So what's the problem? What are you talking about?
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, through the chair. Mine is more an administrative question. What is the difference between a noting paper, which is what this is, and a report to council? The reports have recommendations and further action. Is this the end of this matter now that the public person raised? Are they going to get a letter back? What's the process from here?
Well, it's down for the report to be received, but if there's a further discussion required by council, we can request a paper coming back specifically what to be based on. Bill, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I need an instruction
Yes.
to proceed with something, but I just, the options we have is to continue working with regional council to see, they've got more scientific staff and opportunity to proceed with further testing, which they're doing anyway.
So if council decides that they would like a report at certain times, then that is what we can request from this.
Yeah, but I guess my question was, a specific member of public raised this, didn't they? Are they going to go back? Are we going back to them to say, this is the result? Thank you.
Yes. But we have to receive it and acknowledge it.
That's what
Yes, yes, sorry, yes, no, he has to be, because that is, you're correct, that is how we got to this conversation.
Yeah.
In the report, so yes. Co-fucking arrangement.
Through worship. So the next step is not just simply receiving this, in my view, the next step is to thank the regional council for doing the testings thus far, but to request that this now be taken to the next stage and to regular monitoring, regular testing, not just in the summer swimming season, but year round, and also especially to look more closely at the potential effect of seepage from those old septic tanks, because it's just not addressed here at all. And so it's not a matter of just receiving the report at all and thanking Mr. Breeze for drawing it to our attention. No. I do note also in the report that the testing that was done at the farm at the eastern end of the lake was nowhere near the dairy shed. It's a long way away. There's two testing sites there, one mid farm and one for a south farm drain, but nothing anywhere near the dairy shed, which I would have thought. It's not very far away from the lake. And it would quickly find its way, somehow it would find its way into the lake, and that would have been a far better place to test it, I would have thought.
Well, that's regional council determine that, because I mean, everything ends up in the drain eventually, or the lake, but it'll certainly be a good indicator, I would have thought. If there was something untoward in the drain, you would go further with that investigation.
But if you through the bush, but you have a look at that aerial photo, you can see those drains are nowhere near in relation to.
Yep.
It's of no use.
Well, there is one to the side that's not a testing point.
So they're no use at all. That testing.
So with this, it's obvious that there's going to be further requests from council on this work. So at the moment, regional council tests for a set period of time, obviously the peak summertime, looking for issues there. What is the ability to mix up the testing sites and have a program that's set through the year, or more applicable to sites that are at higher risk of contamination? Is there an ability to do that?
I have to go back to the powers that be and discuss what kind of resources, because this wasn't programmed work, this was just really informal. It was created by informal discussions I had with
Through the chair, could I suggest that council request information or process through to regional council? So it would pay to utilise the council processes between the two organisations.
So sorry, everyone's hands up. Shall we do it just finish?
So we're definitely taking on board everything that everybody said. And so, and I'm just thinking from a scientific point of view, because there's other things that aren't so much scientific, but other areas that other people will get involved with. But from a scientific point of view, it's really just what the best way forward, best bang for buck might be as well. If we do future work, what sort of things we go and survey and measure and those sorts of things. So,
Councillor McKenzie, and then we'll move to put some points in.
Can we, I know we're 11 months out, but can we email and copy in the Coast Waters directors as well? Because of the issues Stephen and Councillor Maitland raised about septic tanks, maybe that's a work stream that they should be, doing occasional monitoring of very old systems that were consented or something. Is that something that's?
Yeah, well, it's a potential there. We don't have a budget, nor is it our normal operation procedure to go and monitor.
I'm not saying we do that work, but just get them keep them informed, so that, because there's concern from councillors, and I can never say that first word, but Paul about the septic tanks. So clearly there's an issue there.
Sorry,
just through the chair. So just to answer that, Councillor McKenzie, yes, the council's in constant contact now with Coast Waters, as the CCO is, quite close to standing up. So we had the directors here, and the other team were with them, and we also are keeping them abreast of any large projects or any situations like this, so that they're very aware of what's coming from us as well. And they're doing obviously the same with the other two councils as well. So that's ongoing conversations now.
That we can certainly CC them into from today. So that they've got that indication of carrying forward any specific work that's required. Councillor Walker.
Just to throw my 2 cents in, I generally agree with Paul. I think it's reassuring. We currently don't have a problem, seems quite evident. But I guess ultimately we want to know, is there a policy, or is there maybe scope to create a policy around septic systems around our main source of drinking water? That's ultimately what this whole conversation came of. Because currently it seems like there's a process to get a consent to put in a septic system. It has to be, at that point, governance has a say, but after that, what happens? We could be just naive
through the chair, the laying out systems and that it's undertaken and measured and under the resource consent and the building consent to make sure that it's fit for purpose and you get the, because as I said, septic tanks, etc., are designed to leach into the ground. If you drill a borehole beside a septic tank, you're going to get E. coli because that's how they work. It leaches through the ground system. The time it reaches the waterway, it's cleansed. All the pathogens are pretty much killed out of it. So, look into something like that, but there would be something.
Yeah, no, I guess that's the ultimate concern, isn't it? Is, the policy and that's where the gap in information is for the councillors, I guess, is we've got a concern about a failure of septic systems into Lake Canary, and the snapshot now says everything's great, but I guess we want the information to know what about the future, and maybe
the timetable that this investigation work was done was when it's very busy up there. So your percentage of leaching going into the ground or into the waterway is going to decrease in winter time.
Yeah,
because there's less people.
But we need to hone in what we expect information we want from regional council or our council. I mean,
Yes, but also we've got to appreciate that will go to post office too. So we're on shorter time frame now with that.
It will, definitely.
Yeah, yes. So with that, we can receive the report, but we can make a recommendation that we send a letter to Mr. Breeze acknowledging his request for investigative work which is being done. And we can outline to him the outcomes, but we can also outline to him what work we are intending to do following up with this, potentially in preparation of this going to post orders to manage going forward. I think that would be the appropriate pathway to do, and then we can make a recommendation to the board of our concerns and expectations regarding further water controls.
Chair, I'd like to thank Shanti Morgan, the Group Manager of Environmental Services, and Johnny Horrocks here for working with us in this particular area. There's been a good working relationship between the two of us, and the final word is compared to all the other lakes of the area, Run, etc., what quality of water is in the baking areas? Thank
Sorry, we're just trying to sort the notes we're doing. Councillor, I'll take this as the last point. Last question. Thank you. Councillor Mayne.
Yeah, just to reaffirm, so the likelihood of the pathogens or E. coli going 50 metres through the alluvial gravels to reach the lake would be unlikely from a septic tank. Would that be your point of view?
It depends on the rainfall regimes and all sorts of things. And it depends on the soil types as well. There's so I couldn't answer that question as much as I'd like to with a yes or no for a 50-metre scenario. But the soil type is important. Plus, these systems often have different systems which have different efficacy for reducing E. coli, so out of the gate as such. Plus, the disposal fields. Old systems tend to be better than older systems, but you soil type and things like that. There's a good tool that used to be called ESR, now it's PHF, I don't know what that stands for, but it's an online tool that you can plug in. You could run scenarios for out there, and you stick in gradients or types, which you can all get online, where septic tankers, all sorts of things you can actually run the simulators. Okay. Longer is better. Viruses can go farther than E. coli to a large extent because viruses are more numerous when they're being discharged. If there are any viruses like norovirus being discharged at all, so it's a big part of it's really frequency. And you'll get different things at different times. So really it's just about what that risk level might be. Is it 1% of the time? Is it 0.1% of the time? Might be getting something again.
So it's hard to have quick thing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Johnny, for that. There's nothing further for Johnny. Everybody's happy with the discussion there. We will move on to receiving the report. But with that, the resolution is that the report be received, that council directs staff to send a letter to Paul Breeze on the results of the report, and that council directs staff to request further reporting from West Coast Regional Council on septic tank management in that area. And before I put on a potentially a point 3, Earl, as far as making a recommendation to the Board of Coast Waters.
Through the chair, yeah, I'll send them a note to say that it's an item that's of interest.
Thank you, that's what I'm after. And if we just acknowledge that, that Earl's District Assets Manager will send a note to the Coast Waters Board as a point of interest for this council. Is everybody happy with that? Right, okay, can I have a move for a second, please, on the receiving report, and you want those points read out again, or are you happy with that? Happy with that? Okay, can I have a move for a second, please? Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Walker, thank you very much. All in favour? Thank you, everybody, for that. Thank you very much, Johnny, for your time today.
Yeah.
It's greatly appreciated. You can appreciate the concern that we have for that area. Thanks all very much. Right, so we've got that recorded. Next on the agenda is the amended delegations manual, and again, I will hand over to Stephen to take us through.
Thank you, Richard. So just to note that the delegation manual was brought to our council back in February this year, you may recall. We're basically required to make updates to it as and when needed. So this is just administrative updates. I think you'll note the main changes are around local states of emergency and a request made by the chief executive to strengthen our delegation manual because as it's the only emergency authority was held by the chief executive. And I guess with the chief executive not being here today, it demonstrates the need that we need additional delegations. The delegations have been added as strictly only in the event of a local emergency being declared. So it's not for any other sort of emergency. The chief executive retains that authority alone. This is just where a local state of emergency is being declared. We've also added in the controller, which is a reserved title for the person who's managing the event. That's purely, I mean, it probably is overkill, but we've now got 4 people with delegations, but in the event that all of the SLT were unavailable, the controller themselves have delegated financial authority on behalf. Those still go through all of the checks that would go through regardless of finance checks are still carried out. It's not like giving a blank check to the controller. They still have to follow up processes and procedures, as would any of the GMs that are given delegated authority. But again, it's just really making sure that in the event that the chief executive is not here or the controller is not one of the general managers who is named, that the controller also has authority. And there's just a couple of minor amendments to staff title changes and also adding in a credit card for Mayor's Task Force. The reason that's added in is actually sits within the contract that Mayor's Task Force has with the council. They operate independently with their own funds from us. At the moment, the Mayor's Task Force uses credit card that's held by myself as Chief Financial Officer. It would just be much cleaner on behalf of the council and Mayor's Task Force to separate those out. It just creates less administrative burden. And the Mayor's Task Force coordinator already has $5,000 delegated authority. So it's not adding new authorities, we're just giving them the ability to use a credit card. Again, all of those checks will still be in place. Just one of the points, I need to make one amendment, which is on page 88. Excuse me, which relates to this labeled asset manager, because of literally between this report being writing and changes that happened internally within Bill's team. The title's actually been changed to asset management specialist. And the delegation originally was reduced from 10,000, but is being maintained at 50,000. So that role is not originally, we plan to reduce it, or actually saying we want to hold it as it was. Apologies for the late amendment, but that's literally something that's happened over the last week. So we have an amendment to the resolution on that.
That's good, because that answered my question. I was going to say, why are they, all those managers have a 50K line, and that one's only 10.
Yes, it's true. So yes, it's been since corrected. Yeah, so I'm happy to take any further questions.
Questions, please. I'll go Harry Matchwick and then I'll go councillor and councillor.
Thank you, through worship. The 6 months ago, the chief executive would have a Visa card, I understand, and we've rectified that. We've given a Visa card to something of lower level management. What's the reason for that? I see your reasons given in the report, but what are the expenses? What are we talking about?
So through the chair, so the Mayor's Task Force, as you know, has separate funding, so it's not council funded, it's funded externally. So they're basically often sent out to buy shoes for candidates who are unable to first themselves, or tools and equipment, or so it's not things that we could easily procure via a purchase order system. It's things where we literally send someone to the Mayor's Task Force person themselves will literally go and buy something from the warehouse or from whichever shop it is that they need to do it. So having a credit card for them just makes it much simpler for them to do that. And again, all of the controls are in place for it. They do that already. It's just they have to claim that back through an expense system, which is just creates more work. So having that credit card there just simplifies that process. But the controls around that, just to be very clear as well, this is not opening the floodgates. There will be no further credit cards issued by the council. It's literally held by myself, the chief executive, and this is just a separate issue in terms of management of something where they're out. You know, our preference always is not to use a credit card. Our preference is always to use purchase orders. We have supplies in place. So it means like New World, we have a supply in place with New World. So we try and make sure we have agreements in place with where we can. But these are shops where the only method is for someone to physically go and buy it and pay for it.
And if I can clarify, in the past, that was funded out of our Mayor's Task Force. The people that ran that, they paid for it out of their pocket and then had to seek reimbursement, which sometimes took considerable time through the previous old process we had, which wasn't acceptable. They were declined that card, and it was detrimental to what they were trying to do for these kids, getting them into apprenticeships and work. Because sometimes it comes down to the tools or whatever health and safety requirements that business has on those kids. So the funding is there, it's always retrieved back, and as Stephen said, the controls on it are extensive, but this allows them to act in a better structure than what they previously had to experience and endure.
I'm sure, Your Worship, that this isn't the only council though that doesn't equip their Mayor's Task Force for Job Navigator with credit card.
Oh, I think you'll find there's quite a few around that too, because of that same reason.
Well, we don't know because but I wouldn't imagine that would be the case.
Well, I do sit with the as one of the mayors that belongs to the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs wider New Zealand community, and it is because they've all run into that same complexity.
And so they've all got credit cards.
I don't know about all of them, but I know that quite a significant number of them do. And the reason, but the restraints in there as far as managing it are very, very tight.
Well, I mean, that's my next question is, what are those controls? Because we've been stung. Francois and I have been stung in the past by misuse of credit card in an organisation in this town to a huge amount. So we know the effects of this. So what are the controls?
So through the chair, so that I mean the credit card itself is a $5,000 limit, so it's not insignificant, but it's not a huge limit. But also there are multiple sign-offs on the credit cards. It's done on a regular basis. Our banking system is live, so we can see transactions coming through as and when they are. So, and there's a multiple sign-off process. So ultimately, all transactions, regardless of how they're incurred, are seen by me. So there's multiple layers of middle management, and then finally myself signing off on the credit card. So,
Councillor McKenzie.
Through the chair, with the emergency spend of 100K per item for the three PMs, is there a report back to council after it's used, because it's not clear from the paper, or dare I say the delegations manual?
through the chair, yes, I can take your point, but it isn't specifically mentioned. So in the same way that sensitive expenditure is reported annually by council whenever any staff, or sorry, any officer uses kind of these extreme measures, then that's reported. So it isn't explicitly here, but yes, that's a standard process, in the same that all write-offs are reported, our sensitive expenditures are reported, and emergency expenditure as well.
Should we therefore explicitly say in the recommendations that it should be reported back? If we're giving you that extra authority, that would be the one check item in place.
Through the chair, I just need to confirm where the rules are that set already. So I don't know off the top of my head. I have a feeling under the Local Government Act we're required to report it. So this probably falls under the same category, but I need to confirm where that's from. So whether or not it's explicitly needed here or not, but.
So in lieu of finding that, it wouldn't hurt to have that in there anyway, because it would be null and void if it's already in there, but it's noted in there that there was a request at the council table.
Yeah.
And I think I probably have agreements from the councillors around the table that we include that wording. Would that be?
Through the chair, Your Worship, also because it says here that it's enacted when it's a local state of emergency, generally reclaim all those state of emergency funds back from central government, so it will be captured in that way as well.
So with that, is there still the demand or the need seen for including just that sensitive financial spend must be reported back to council? Or is everybody happy that, I do know from being involved in civil defence that, there are some really tight controls keen on that, but it's what you wish to see included in the written material.
I'm happy for it to be captured on paper. I think that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, let's do it.
Agreements are on the table. Yes, Councillor Maitland.
Yes, through the chair, Earl. So is that standard practice in an emergency that government usually stumps up for those costs?
It depends, but listen, yeah, it's quite, it does depend. Generally, in a civil emergency, there's various streams of funding that we can get claim back through the civil defence system. Other items we can't.
In the definition, I was just wondering what the definition of item would be. And there's like $100,000 limit per item. So for example, one of the general manager of business enablement suddenly found 3 items that needed to be addressed. Does that mean they're going to be able to spend $1,000, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, specifically a single spend limit. It's not a cumulative limit. If you imagine if, in certain circumstances, I mean, obviously where the LTP had protections in place, so it's a multi-million-dollar spend that council officers are signing off multi-million dollars on the basis it's already pre-approved. Because this is emergency expenditure, then obviously depending on what the situation was and what we needed, we can't be hitting a limit. So it is it's a single item. It's just to make sure it's not.
Okay.
We can't be in it. We have a situation, for example, just I can't think of a good one from a defence point of view. Sorry, my colleagues would probably help me, but say that our electricity bills are of $300,000 potentially. So we have to have an ability to be able to make those payments. If that wasn't pre-approved by the LTP, technically no officer of the council has the ability to make that invoice. So it's in emergency situations, it needs to be a high enough number that we're not stuck by a single item going, we can't. So it's probably about it. We can't order a helicopter that we need sending over that we've suddenly got to pay for. If that's a good example.
That's a really good example.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, you're exactly right. And many times I've had to issue purchase orders, etc., for emergency flood damage work or house protections, or to get contractors moving, because no one will go in without authorisation, so that's the process we utilise.
This allows that should there be a disaster and the first port of call is to get a helicopter to go and view because we can't drive, that if there's other things that are needed to get into those communities and urgent action is taken, that will cover that expenditure.
So secondly, like that item 11.3, that some measures can be further delegated to someone else, or I say the manager.
By 11 points.
What page are you on?
It's page 78.
With the 1 month manual being adopted by the council, the manager shall determine the delegations which they would wish to make under this clause.
Yeah, through the chair. So there's a separate section that manages what can and can't be delegated, but yeah, it does give the chief executive authority to delegate. So technically the chief executive could delegate her financial authority when she's not here, but obviously there's a problem. Being too morbid, if the chief executive is incapacitated and is unable to make a delegation, that's why we need to have something in place now. So in theory, yes, the chief executive could have, but like where we know she's left, like specifically for a reason like this week, she could have said, I delegate authority to the chief financial officer who's acting chief executive, but in a situation where that's not possible, there's some why I did a separate part into it if they're not able to be able to delegate that authority. But there are limitations again on what can and can't be delegated, which are covered in different parts of the manual.
So in case of an emergency, would there be a sort of a collective discussion between the managers to decide the path forward, or would it be just up to an individual to say,
My understanding is the controller takes.
We're drilling down into the unknown because when these situations happen, they happen fast and the decisions to do what and to manage situations are done quickly as well. So it's not a matter of having a team chat on what gets done. I'll hand over to Lee to answer that.
If I can just do the check for that point, councillor, is that would be determined by the controller at that time. So if we have activated, from the emergency management team, from that point of view, the controller is the one who's in charge, so to speak. And that's why we're looking for that delegation to be able to give to the controller. Yeah. As well as GMs, if we are there and we haven't declared and we haven't got a controller there, then that capability is there. But the controller in that situation would be the one who can make the decision.
Yeah, that's what I was imagining would happen.
Yes.
So the part you're reading in here is one section of the delegation manual, but what we're talking about with the civil defence don't bring that into it because that's talking about the other managers bringing in and reporting with that 1 month. The emergency management works in a different way.
Just
That's why it's in there. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Just a quick question. Civil defence controller, is that always going to be a member of staff? Could that be you or the deputy mayor?
It's not me. I make this make the declaration on the state of emergency.
Yeah.
It's somebody that's trained, as in Lee.
If I can just through the chair, so it may well be a member of staff, so like myself or Earl from that perspective, but it could also, until we have the complete training package, so to speak, to have the best interest for our district at heart, that we may have an external come in to undertake that activity for us.
And through the chair, that's happened here many times, particularly over multi-day ones, because you just can't stay and they can hold the so you can rotate people in and out. So, but the regulation, well, the regulatory requirements and the paperwork that goes along with any expenditure during that period is immense. So it's all captured.
Again, through the chair, but what we are endeavouring to try and do is to ensure that we have the capability through our own staff for various reasons, but to try and be self-sufficient from that perspective, basically, of internal staff having that capability. But in the interim, or should things change in the future, we can bring in an external to assist us. So
the controller is trained. They have to go through an extensive training course. And in the past, we've had controllers come to us from Grey, from Buller, from Christchurch, from Canterbury. So depending on the situation and the length of time, we have that churn. And at the moment, we are a bit devoid of controllers here with losing TC and her husband. So we are staff are going through that training process at the moment.
So it's not the short woman with frizzy hair that we had that training with. In civil defence, Councillor Walker and I went up.
Yeah, Brownlee or
Claire?
No, she's the
He described like that.
No, there is our civil defence, from a regional perspective, yes.
And so Claire has assisted us at times previously from a local perspective, but she is the regional manager. So if we were to declare and we were to say that, hey, we can't actually cope and we need some assistance, the ECC then would be stood up and Claire would be in that role basically.
So I thought Claire was the person you're referencing.
No, it's a named person and it can change. It is, which is why it's just called the controller.
So it's not just anybody and not just anybody can assume their position.
Yeah, but I thought reading it, I thought it was her.
Oh,
This is the only person I met in the civil
No,
defence.
no. So is everybody quite happy with that, with where we've been with that? Councillor Martin. Oh, sorry, Councillor Green, I'll come to you. Oh, Councillor Martin and then Councillor Philette.
And in regards to the,
Just passing you.
we've got no issues with the emergency. Declarations, but 2.3 on page 75. I now read this incorrectly, but delegates will willingly accept direction and responsibility for decision making and decision knowledge that their decisions, if made in a full, fair and objective manner, will not be reviewed lightly. What does that mean?
Well, I would be thinking that it means informed and serious scrutiny.
Yeah.
They will or?
No, there will be.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
not
because
reviewed
if
lightly.
they've done them with, they've been
It should
delegated
be,
to it and
will
they've
be
made a
reviewed,
full,
yeah, will not be reviewed lightly, which means that they would be reviewed in a serious manner.
Yeah, but I can't understand what the intent is at the start of that paragraph.
But we're not actually going through the delegations manual.
No, we're not.
Just
No.
Getting distracted here.
Yes, we are. Yes, but I get your question and we can get that answered for you, Councillor Martin, to give you surety there. But it is saying that the delegate will have to accept that they will be scrutinised.
Okay.
For accountability's sake. So if we can go back to the matters at hand, thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, for steering that back. Is everybody quite happy if we progress through to receiving the report?
So, one last question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gillett, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, through your worship. I'll be the devil's advocate. I'm a bit cynical on this because effectively there's two separate issues in this report and we're debating the major issue and on approving that, the second issue gets carried through automatically, which I'm referring to this Visa card. So I just want to know who would hold this card and what pre-use checks would apply, because it seems to me that the current situation is post-purchase when a purchase is done and then it is then subsequently approved or not. So what controls would there be if we did approve this card? And the second point I just want clarity is in terms of this emergency delegation requirement or request, has there been a problem to date? What are we actually solving? Are we just tidying up something that may or may become a problem in the future when it appears though it hasn't been a problem in the past?
So through the chair, so with regards to the visa, so the visas will be held by the Employment Navigator, unusual title, sorry, it's called the MES Passport Employment Navigator. So they've been in this position for several years now. The expenditure that comes through, yes, you're correct, it's after the event that it is reviewed, but they know they have broad guidelines in terms of, or not broad, but guidelines in terms of what they actually can and can't spend. And what they're using it for. As I said, these are small purchase amounts. They're not, it's multiple, which is what causes the problem, because every time there's potentially an interview or if someone needs equipment to go for a job, then that's what this is used for. So it's not the expenditure that they're spending on is quite routine in terms of what they know they're doing, and it's the same things we see over and over again. So I don't know, this is an officer that's been doing this job for several years and is aware of what they can and can't do through the Mayor's Task Force itself. I mean, the Task Force itself sets out the agreement that we have, what that funding can be used for. So, you know, that yes, there is a potential that something could end afterwards be an event, but then that would be picked up very quickly and steps be taken to make sure it didn't happen again.
Just to respond to Stephen's point, to give surety to the councillors that are worried about fraud, is it just better to reduce the limit of the credit card? If you're talking about small spends, you don't need a £5,000 limit, because you can, as the controller of the funds, pay off the credit card a week after it's been spent, you know. And so should we drop it to £2,000 or? Yeah.
I think $1,000.
Pardon me?
$1,000, 1,000.
If I can, I know that we've had 4 candidates that have had to have their work gear equipped, and it would have gone over that. So there would have been delay in placing them and getting them into those apprenticeship or work positions. Sometimes there's singular people that she's dealing with, and sometimes there's multiple. So I hear what you're saying, Councillor Gillett, but I'm just thinking about what she's had to deal with and try and transition into work. And I think the most she's had at any one time has been 5 or 6. And it depends on what line of work they're going into is what is required. But that I would potentially see $1,000 cap as being a little bit restrictive to getting those kids in there ready to go.
Yeah, the other concern I have is issuing a card tends to normalise a spending kind of attitude if it's there, available.
Is there wording we need to put in place to protect it?
I mean, through the chair, yeah, I mean, I acknowledge the limits points, and I said, and we could look to do a lower limit. I think 1,000 would be too low. Like, one of the reasons that we're trying to do this is to speed up the process. And if the card is not sufficient enough, then it's almost not worth having. As much I'd like to issue the card to this member of staff. I suppose I'm just trying to, there definitely won't be further credit cards issued. I mean, this is the situation for this is really because it's Mayor's Task Force job. That's why this is being done separately. It's not a normal operation of the council. We don't normally go out and buy equipment, plumbing equipment, or buy shoes for people or clothing for people. So it's really trying to enable that process, I guess, is where I'm coming from on why this was put forward that we would issue it. So I guess it's that this is a member of staff who we trust to do this, and I understand there are fraud concerns, but there are plenty of processes in place for it. I mean, this is not a card that's going to be used to do anything other than Mayor's Task Force. It's not cancelled funds. I know that's not saying we don't defend them, but there's no risk from that point of view.
So can we cap the limit, drop to a lower limit, perhaps a 2,000?
Yeah, sure. 2.5, like Councillor Mackenzie suggested, would be sufficient, because we can, as you say, we can clear it mid-month if we need to, if that's going to be an issue for it. So if that makes council's more comfortable with that. So
is council more comfortable with a reduction in that limit to 2,500?
Sorry, Councillor Gaz, I'll just go back to your previous point. No, you're correct. As it stands at the moment, it hasn't been an issue. I suppose, case in point, though, we're doing today, and it turns out, thankfully, the storm has reduced. But obviously, the chief executive is not present at the moment. So having that there in place already, this is only in the event of what the correct term, stand-up of the emergency committee. So it's not something that has any other purpose. And it's really just ensuring that we don't, we're dealing with an emergency. The last thing we want to be doing is realizing who's got authority. Can someone send an email to say this person's got authority? We just need to be able to act. So, and again, it's only one person. It's not like every person listed on this. Someone will be appointed, the controller, and then they will be managing this. So, and it could be one of the GMs, or it could be someone externally.
So could you still have a?
Just to clarify, the chair, sorry, the Mayor's Task Force is funded externally, and surely they have a budget, right? So those are checks as well. I mean,
yes,
yeah. And one last question, I'm sorry if it's a sensitive question, but the change in for the asset manager from 50 down to 10, is there a reason?
No, shares the other way around. It's been amended back.
Back.
Yeah,
It was 50 reduced to 10 and then because of changes, it's gone back to 50.
Stay where it was.
Okay.
So it has always been 50.
Right.
We thought we were going to reduce it, but because of between this report being writing and changes that happened internally, we now need to maintain it at the existing level.
Okay, forgot, sorry. But
So it's not, yeah, we were weakening it rather than increasing it, so.
So is everybody ready to move this forward to some action points on this? Yep, righto. So the resolution is that that one, the report be received. That two, that council adopt the amended delegations manual with the following changes. 2.1, add contractual authority for emergency expenditure when a local state of emergency has been declared under the Civil Defence Emergency Act 2002 with a $100,000 per item limit to the Chief Financial Officer, General Manager Business Enablement, General Manager District Assets and General Manager Regulatory and Compliance. 2.2, reduce the delegated authority of the Strategy and Transformation Manager from $50,000 per item to $10,000 per item. 2.3, add the Civil Defence Controller as a new delegated officer with contractual authority for emergency expenditure when a local state of emergency has been declared under the Civil Defence Emergency Act 2002 with a $100,000 per item limit. 2.4, change the title of the Asset Strategy and Development Manager to Asset Management Specialist. 2.5, add a business visa card for the MES Task Force for Jobs Employment Navigator with a credit limit of $2,500. 2.6, remove the section related to elected members' expenses as this is covered by council's policy on elected members' allowances. Which one? Item 3, council requests that expenses incurred during a local state of emergency are reported back to council. Do I have a move or a second to refer it? Thank you, councillor Burden. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mackenzie?
No.
Councillor Muntz? Sharing around, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Sorry, can I just, on this side, show of hands? Right, carried. Thank you, everybody, for that. Appreciate it. Right. Moving on to the dangerous, affected and insanitary buildings policy, and I'll hand over to Maggie, General Manager Regulatory and Compliance to speak to this.
Now for something completely different. So I'll take the report as read, and really this report related to this policy is part of a programme, I guess, review update. You'll recall I've brought a number of policies and bylaws to you over the short time that I've been here to bring them up to date, and this is the next one in the line, so to speak. It's really just it's part of a statutory review. We are required to have a policy with regards to dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings under the Building Act, of how we're going to address, should we get them. We don't have very many of these, and to put this into context for you, we've issued 4 dangerous building notices in the last 3 years. And so it's a rare occurrence for us, and it's where we might have a building that is of imminent danger to somebody public. And so by way of example, we have a wall that is about to fall down, a chimney that's about to fall off a roof, basically, from that point of view. And so that's where it comes in. Affected might be a building that is next to that dangerous building, so the next door neighbour from that perspective, and then sanitary speaks for itself. And so this is really just a modernisation of language, is to take on board more of the more recent guidelines from the ministry to make sure that it is fit for purpose and is following the legislation from that point of view. Perhaps to take any questions.
Questions, please?
Through the chair, could this include dream campsites?
No.
Good question.
Questions? Councillor Gillette.
Yeah, so reading the report, we actually don't need to do anything, is that correct?
Correct. In respect of, we still need to consult publicly on it. So it's, and with this policy, along with a number of the policies, in fact, every one that I've brought in front of you so far in the bylaws, it has to follow the statutory consultation procedure, and so we will go out and consult on it. We will then take submissions in relation to the policy or the proposed policy. If there are any submissions, have a hearing, and then it comes back to council for adoption.
If we don't change the policy, are you saying that we still need to consult?
If we don't change the policy in any way, shape or form, then no. But this is not changing the policy wouldn't take on board the more recent guidelines from the ministry and wouldn't necessarily make it fit for purpose.
But but at the end of the day, we do not need to change the policy. Is that correct?
My recommendation, hence the report, would be that you do amend the policy to take on board the most recent guidelines from the ministry. However, if you choose not to, that is your decision.
Because the flow-on effect from adopting a new policy is a new testing regime, and a new testing regime would therefore incur additional costs to council.
Well, through the chair, in relation to the testing regime, but going out to the community to ensure that the policy follows the guidelines in relation to the ministry, and that is part of the legislation and I guess the democracy in relation to that.
Yes, yeah, my personal preference is the status quo, because it costs money to consult and it'll cost money to comply with the new testing regime. And if we don't have to do it, why spend the money?
So legislatively, we are required to amend our policy.
You're required to review your policy every 5 years. Even though we haven't in relation to this, it doesn't mean that it doesn't stay effective, basically. From guidelines and guidance from the ministry, they have advised to say that we should review the policy and modernise it in relation to those guidelines, which is why this report is coming to you. If you choose not to do that, that is your choice. There may be a risk in relation to the ministry coming back to council to ask why it hasn't. That may be the response by Councillor Gillett in relation to why you have not. My recommendation would be that we do go through that process and we do consult on the policy.
What are the risks of not, as far as being, as far as mitigating risks, I guess, within context of this policy?
I guess the risks would be that the ministry would ask the question as to why you haven't taken on board their guidance. And the reason that you have chosen not to do that is because there would be a cost to your community.
So with it being in the sanitary buildings policy as well, proposed dangerous effect of the sanitary buildings. So as far as being compliant with buildings, we would be at risk of being non-compliant with the legal requirements of those buildings.
I won't necessarily say not non-compliant. I guess what we're looking at, one of the elements is that it's enhancing the policy to include MV's guidance and the documentation that they have to try and strengthen the correlation between what we've currently got to where the ministry is moving, basically. So there's always a risk in relation to the ministry then may come back as part of the territorial authority assessments. And so the ministry assesses as the council functions from a building point of view regularly, and they may look at, for argument's sake, things to do with residential pool fencing, to say the measures that we've got in relation to that regime, are we doing those in accordance with the most up-to-date guidance? This is part of one of those assessments, and the last assessment that they had done, which was last year, this is where their recommendations to review our policy and to take on board their guidance was.
Are there any other policies, changes or amendments that we have to consult on that we've been working through that we could piggyback in to reduce the consultation costs?
There will be other bylaws, for argument's sake, or other policies such as the gambling policy that will come to you in due course. That we will be having further conversations with regards to freedom camping. I guess the challenge that you have in doing that consultation is that it starts to conflate and could muddy the waters somewhat in relation to the fact of where our communities are submitting. But if you would like us to delay that to another piece of consultation, we can do it.
Well, I think what's the cost of consultation?
Well, that's what I was going to ask through the chair, is is there any written, I mean, you mentioned the Building Act. Is there any parameters in how we have to consult, or can we just slap it on the website?
No. So through the chair, so that's through the Building Act refers back to the Local Government Act, which is the special consultative procedure, basically. And so that procedure is what we have done and we are going to be doing moving forward with the LTP in relation to the fact that we put it in the paper, we advise, we put it on our website. So the cost is the cost of the paper, first and foremost, for the advertisement. We put it on our website. The public then makes submissions in relation to that, and then it's your time and my time again as we have these conversations through any hearing that may or may not be required and a further report back to you. So the costs are, I would argue, minimal. However, there is a cost, to be fair to Councillor Gillett.
So can you lump it in with the LTP? And just trigger by just sometime next year.
Through the chair, if I can respond to that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but if you'd like me to delay it to link it with maybe the gambling policy that I'll bring either next month or the following month, we can certainly do that if that's your preference.
I think so. Councillor Gillett, what you put your hand up, then I'll come to Councillor Gillett.
Through your worship, I just have to make a comment that we've got a central government regime which wants to impose rates capping, right? But is quite happy to pass the cost of all its policies onto the local people to pay for. They don't contribute to everything. And that's why I question, do we need to do this piece of work? What is the risk? And what is the cost of doing it and implementing it? And if we can get away with spending money and we can comply with this imminent rates capping, why not?
I can understand where Councillor Gillett's coming from, but the cost of this to me is very minimal. It's not like we're rolling out the LTP and with a roadshow and community meetings, any of that sort of cost. It's an advertisement online and in the newspaper. I think it's great that Lee's working away, getting all these old dated bylaws, policies up to speed. So we're actually able to, actually enforce some of these things that we've had issues with over the last few years. So I absolutely support it. I think getting these things up to date and in line with the ministry's directives and things is great work. I don't know why we'd want to put anything in the way of that.
But does it make sense just to combine it with the gambling one that he's working on? Yeah. If it's only a month or so away.
Well, there's no risk of confusion between the two because they're two totally different policies.
That's your prerogative. I'm trying to get it to you next month in relation to that.
Wouldn't that be less work for the organisation?
Not necessarily. I mean, I have this all lined up anyway. So if you want me to press pause, I can press pause. If your decision is no, you want to carry on, then when I walk out of this room, I'm going to be saying continue. But that's your choice. My recommendation is we continue. It's your decision.
Councillor Maitland, and I'll have to Councillor Burden.
Thank you. To the chair, has there been a history of non-compliance in these regards in the past? Like, is it very prevalent?
Can I just clarify by non-compliance?
Like say, for example, someone's living in an unhealthy building with mold and stuff like that, or
not for the work that we're doing. Basically, as I say, we've issued 4 dangerous building notices in 3 years. It's not something, and as this report refers to, we don't go out proactively looking for work or for problems, so to speak, whereas we get notified of these. We work with the building owner, and where there's a need, we issue the notice as a dangerous building notice. Where there's not a need, we work with the owner and we get the matter resolved.
So there already is pretty much in place legislation to cover those points anyway. Like the way I see it, what's been proposed doesn't really make a lot of difference.
What's being proposed with respect to modernises it and incorporates the most recent guidelines from the ministry, following the ministry undertaking a territorial authority assessment last year, which was their recommendations that this should happen. So we are following through with those recommendations. It aligns with the need to review the policy within every 5 years anyway. You could say, no, we want to keep the status quo. There may be a response back from the ministry. I can't speak on their behalf in relation to that. The reverse of that is that we do go ahead with my recommendation, is that we do the consultation to bring the current policy up to date. And I do feel that there'll be minimal costs in relation to that, but I take on board the comments from council.
I think too, I think that, I know whatever's down the track, we don't know at this stage as far as reforms go, but I would be expecting to see that as a requirement from the government that all councils have themselves up to date with their policies and all matters within council's legal requirements, legislative requirements. So if we don't do it now, we'll be having to do it, or we suspect within the next couple of years anyway. I can't see the government progressing forward without requesting compliance from all councils with all legislation. Councillor Walker, and I'll come back to Councillor Kinsey.
I'm happy to support Lee in getting this policy consultation. I'm also happy to delay it by a month and tie it up with the gambling policy if we, as it's a group, feel like that's more efficient. But I think I just want to say, you know, Lee's getting on top of these things, and in the past, I feel like certain policies have lapsed and we haven't been in the time frame. So I think we have to encourage continuation of, you know, Lee's doing his due diligence. He's getting on top of all these policies. If we find efficiencies by waiting a month, then try to support that. But you know, ultimately, I'm happy just to go ahead. I think the costs are pretty minimal.
Okay.
I'm happy to support it.
Councillor Kinsey, and then we'll
I
move forward.
move that we go for option one and let's get on and vote for it.
Okay, so if everybody's happy, we will progress through to the resolution. And I'm picking that Councillor Mackenzie's happy to move on it. So the resolution is that the report be received and that public consultation be undertaken in accordance with the requirements of the Building Act 2004. And the council approves the updated dangerous, affected and essential buildings policy for public consultation. Do we want to add to that in conjunction with the gambling policy, or are we happy for it to float on its own?
Happy for it to go out on its own. I think we ran the risk of delaying policies going out and we end up with them all compiling. We end up with the risk of them all being due for review at the same time. I think we need to keep this staggered and keep it flowing and keep the workload spread.
Okay, so that completes it at point 3. The council approves the updated dangerous, affected and essential buildings policy for public consultation. I'm picking Councillor Mackenzie. You want to move on that? Yes, Councillor Neri, you have to second. All in favour? Councillor Pease, is that a no? No, it's in favour. Okay, thank you, everybody. No, or is it not? You're on move, Stephen. No, it's still on mute. That.
There you go.
No, it's on mute again.
It's frozen.
Yeah, sorry. You can record it as a yes.
Thank you very much, councillor.
I was on the tipping point.
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Thank everybody with that. So next we move on to, and I'm mindful of the time for having to have a 2-hour break, but we'll get through this next one and then review that. Projects and carry forwards. Thanks, Lee. Projects and carry forwards. I'll hand over to Stephen again to speak to that report, please. It's page 133 through to 136.
Thank you, Worship. We've got 3 minutes tonight. So this is, you'll recall, council, a paper was put forward in the June meeting for carry forwards. At the time, I mentioned at the time that the carry forwards were provisional because obviously we're closing off the year end. So this report is now basically updating the carry forward amounts, saying that we've now had a chance to actualise projects and are more confident on the amounts being carried forward. So this is really just administrative to say these are the updates to it. You'll note that actually the carry forward is reduced because certain projects have been removed or expenditure was actually completed in the year, so we no longer need to carry it forward. Also to say as well, that the capital programme is reviewed fully as part of the LTP, and the carry forwards and the programmes in it will all be reviewed then as well. So hopefully this is just administrative to say this is the final number that we ended on rather than the number you adopted in June. Happy to take questions.
Any questions, please? No questions?
Sorry,
Councillor Burden.
just trying to find it. Earl, the Ross community land purchase and pole shed erection, that's one that's been carried forward now as long as I've been here. Have we got any progress on that one?
I know that they have, the community or themselves have purchased the land, they've purchased the product for the construction of the shed, and now they're just moving forward into construction.
Good to see that one finally happening. So I know there was a big delay there with the land purchase. Cool, thank you.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. Through the chair, was that one any wet weather bridge, is that on the cycle trails? It does.
Yes.
Right, any further questions for projects to carry forward, please? If everybody's happy with that, we'll proceed through to resolving that the report be received and that council approve the updated carry forward of funds for the projects itemised in the updated carry forward 2026-2027 report. Can I have a move to seconder, please? Councillor Mackenzie, thank you very much. The seconder, please. Councillor Verdon, all in favour? Gary, thank you very much, everybody. Right, we will move on to the look, if we do 2 hours, we're supposed to stop for a break. My question to councillors is, do we proceed through and knock off the Kumara Endowment Fund, the electoral system, and then have a break before we go into the public excluded section? Yes? Okay, I'll take those points. Righty-hoo. Kumara Endowment Fund is the next agenda item, page 137, 138. I'll hand over to Stephen once again for that report, please.
So take the report as read. Again, council requested that we get updated legal advice. We were previously approached Simpson Creekson, and they have given an update which I provided on page 138, which, to paraphrase, basically they've said that they've reviewed what they did last time and they still stand by what they said, but it can be used for items that are on the reserve within the Kumara area, so long as the asset is owned by council. They clarified, I think, as well, that they basically, they gave an example of a playground. That was just an example. It was one thing they were suggesting that maybe that's what you want to do, but the advice is that it is for assets that council owned on reserve land within Kumara. So that's the update on basically what we were asked to do. Yeah, so the part that we, moving on, assuming council wants us to look at this further, we need to establish where the Kumara boundary actually refers to, because this is obviously the boundary of the incorporated town of Kumara, whatever the correct legal term was at the time. So that might not just be what we now consider to be Kumara, so we'll need to look at that, obviously. And then if council wants to look to use the funds, then we need direction on what we'd like us to do and how we'd like that to look.
And how what the controls will be on the
Yeah.
funds. So there is still work to be done on this going forward. But first off, we have to ascertain the historic boundaries that the fund was applicable to, because Kumara was about a borough of its own. And this is when the fund was set up, so history will determine. Councillor Mackenzie, and I'll go to the table. Yeah.
They might have the same question I have, but the original intent of the residents was to modernise the endowment fund, and this report clarifies the current permitted uses, which is great, helpful. But I think they want to know how it can be broadened, and I think my understanding is that changing endowment purpose needs a ministerial process. So can we put that into the recommendation that we move on to the next stage and help these people find a way? Because from what they told us at the public meeting we had, is that there are very few reserves in Kumara, so they can't actually use the money for any great purpose. So we need to find a way of broadening it. But that would mean escalating up to the minister, I think.
But we would also have to ensure that the whole community is agreed on that. And there is still a bit of a faction. I've talked to some of them recently. There's still a bit of disagreements in there. So it's another thing we need to tidy up so that we've got that direction on where we take it as far as going to the minister. You're correct. Yeah. Councillor Verdon, Councillor Maitland.
Just clarification, when it says facilities on reserve land, are we talking about recreational reserve? Are we talking about road reserve? Are we talking about what, any other sort of reserve? Or is it all reserves?
Through the chair, so I seek clarification about the conversation with them, and like I said, I can't give out legal advice, but that it's all reserve. So, which is why my point to Councillor Mackenzie is I'm not sure. It would be helpful maybe to understand what community is potentially thinking about, so we could go back and seek legal advice and say, do you consider under the current terms of the endowment that this would be allowed? As I said, rather than having to go and seek ministerial approval to make those changes, because it was, as you said, to Councillor Burton's point, it was all reserve.
When I read this, and maintenance or operating of facilities on reserved land, you could use it to reseal the road reserve, you know? Yeah, so you know, we could expend the budget resealing all of Kamara's footpaths if that's what they wanted. I just don't know how that, in my head, that's not how I saw it, but when you read it like that, that's how the opportunities I see. So some clarity around that would be good.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the conversation I had, and again, I said, I'm just not giving legal advice, but the conversation was that it's not as restrictive as I think it's been perceived to have been. So as long as it's council-owned assets within what's defined to be Kamara. But as I said, the Simpson Greason did suggest that a helpful way forward might be for us to come back with, so they can go away specifically look at us. As you said, that do we want to spend it on road? Do we want to do this? They want to build that, then we can ask specific questions of them. Which is not to say that's what we will do, but it might be helpful to get examples to go back and say, would this be permitted under the existing agreement?
I think so, because ultimately we look at what Kamara has in terms of hall, cemetery, Chinese gardens, footpaths, roading. It's all on council playground, all on council reserved land. All the rest of the land, I assume, is privately owned. So there is nowhere else potentially that it can be spent. So it might, like you say, might not be as restrictive as we and the people of Kamara are thinking.
I think, sorry to jump in against Greg, but through the chair, I had discussions with people in the hall about things like the flag track systems and stuff, because they've got the 150th coming up in October. Can they spend some of that money on that kind of thing? Because it is our welcome mat into the district from over the hill. And so, and we don't have any. Can we talk to your? I said welcome mat, I didn't say. Well, anyway, but yeah, but those kind of things are impending, you know, there's 2 months away. So, and I can see the flags here in this town, but the mayor said they were put up by somebody else. But yeah, Riley's point is where, you know.
Well, when you, through the chair, when you say that, you look at it and you think, well, maintaining or upgrading facilities on reserved land, if that's, you know, street lights that they're attached to one road reserve, then potentially, yeah, it's that clarity we need around that. But having those examples to then go back and seek.
Through the chair, bear in mind that the road reserve going through Kamara is state highway, it's not council owned.
So it's got complexity. So we've got more we can do on it.
The road, but what
we maintain it, but we don't own it.
Because remember at the meeting they had that problem with the gardens on
it
it.
Doesn't say council. Oh no,
yeah, it's council.
Yeah. So before we can go, Councillor Maitland.
To the chair, I think first the boundary of Kamara needs to be defined before anything else, and then find out what's within that is in reserve. And if it goes back to the previous Kamara Borough, which was quite a huge area, when the borough was dissolved, I would imagine that those boundaries would have also been dissolved at the same time. But whether or not the trust, when it was done at that time, still had, you know, sort of recognition of those boundaries that's carried forward could be a bit of a nightmare.
Well, it could be, but I think we've got to ascertain where that boundary sits, because the fund was created for the Kamara Borough, and we have to be mindful of that and respectful of that, because ultimately that's really where the fund should be dispersed, regardless of where any boundaries are today.
Yes.
So there's a bit more work to be done. We need to ascertain that, and we need to consider, look at the maps and find out, get that land defined specifically, and then come back to council and look at potentially going to the community and having significant meeting with the community, looking at what they aspire to have it fund on, deliver the outcomes of those findings, and then map out how we proceed forward with this. I did have a discussion with some of the organisers of the 150 year, and they do know that the chances of that being free for that is not going to be potentially there.
Through your worship, so look, I think we treat carefully with this and slowly, not be stampeded into anything. I agree that the first step should be to ascertain just what it can be used for and under the current legal parameters, not modernising it, because that's trying to circumvent the will of the pioneers that set it up. And that I'd hate to sound like someone else that we all know, but one should not be meddling in heritage. And this is a classic case. It's a classic case where they did not be meddling. And the will of the pioneers that set up this endowment in the first place needs to be honoured. And so we need to be very careful about this.
Okay. It's not a race to the finish line with this one. We've got to treat it with caution.
And I agree with worship. There is division in the community, like it or not, there's division in the community about this. There's certainly far from business. And if there's ever any intention about this, it's not just about who turns up at the Kamara Hall on a Sunday night for a meeting. It's a poll of everyone in that community, a poll. And that's the only way to fairly to do it.
And I have a feeling that poll will be quite wide in the area that will be applicable to the creation of the endowment fund.
And the endowment, sorry, just finally, and the endowment, I'm certain won't take very long to establish that it's more defined for the boundaries of the old Kamara Borough.
Yes.
Because they put outside that, it was Western County. Yeah. And they certainly wouldn't have been allowing endowment for anyone outside of that borough. No. No, it's for the Kamara Borough boundaries, which is clearly defined.
Yep. And more work to be done. So is everybody quite happy that we just purely move to receive the report thus far and the recommendation to do the next stages of work, ascertaining the boundary, and then progress from there? But it is going to be a work in progress, I think, to actually get this right. So is everybody quite happy if we just purely move to receive the report at this stage? With the recommendation that the next level of work is done behind that.
Yeah.
Can you add that into that, please? Okay, so can I have a mover and a second to please resolve that the report be received, and two, that the council direct staff to proceed for the next stage of work establishing Kamara Borough boundary. Mover and second, please. Councillor Maitland, thank you very much. Second, Councillor Mackenzie, all in favour? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Next on the agenda is Havel Drive declaration of private drain as public drain. Hand over to Earl, who also has come here, thanks. Thanks, guys.
So I'll take the what was read. It is more or less just an administrative procedure at this point in time, just to cover off something that should really have been done back when the subdivision was created. So that we're now just picking up, continuing the rest of it. So open the floor to questions.
Questions, Councillor Maitland, I saw his leader was going to come up. And then Councillor.
Thank you, through the chair. Carl, what would be the cost of doing this work for council? Like creating the turnaround and forming the drain?
Turnaround and well, the drain, most of the drain work's already there. What we are doing is doing a little bit of additional drain work in the road reserve, just a pipe where it's been open. I think the estimates on doing the construction work for the turnaround area, sealing and doing the external roadway drain works, so then between 70 and $80,000.
And would that include a survey as well?
No, no, so we're not going down that road of type of survey. We've agreed on an area that we're licensing for the occupation. But one of the larger components of this is the additional drainage work that we're doing at the end of it and in the servicing work. The construction work itself is actually not that big a piece of the like. When you look at the context of it though, we're also resurfacing Heath Drive this season as well. So that work will all be incorporated into that within our existing operational budgets.
And what is the length of Havel Drive? Look.
I think off the top of my head, it's about some of the 13 or 1600 metres.
1600. Yeah. And so the fall, what's in the top Havel, start of Havel Drive, that goes in the direction of where the ranch
falls back towards the terminal end of it and then runs through the private property. Yeah.
Thank you, Carl, for on that. Any further questions on this matter? Oh, sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Possibly just more comment. Good to see this one on the GTT sorted. I've been involved sort of from the beginning. It highlights to me a real issue that we don't want to see again. It's historic, I understand that, but we council is signing off subdivisions and things aren't quite as they should be at the time. So I think it's a good reminder that we need to be on top of all these things. Because I know there's an argument to have this similar argument, I suppose, at the end of different roads. It's a tricky one, but definitely good to see it resolved. I turn around there every day, so I see it, see it with my own eyes and completely understand the issues. Is there any work, Carl, to be done on the remainder of the drainage on either side of Havel Drive? Because I know there's some issues where the bank has collapsed into the drain, blocking drains, and vegetation is growing. And I think that people up there there seems to be a bit of lack of maintenance in their opinion.
Yeah, so we do have a work instruction of the contractor at the moment to do a bit of a refresh and another look at that drain just to tidy up any vegetation overgrowth, and as you said, anything where the banks have collapsed or anything like that. So we generally target that sort of work when we're looking at doing the resurfacing as well. So we'll put a bigger concentration of effort into the road just before we resurface it, and that way we're not going back and afterwards and damaging what you seal it, bits and pieces. So, but it is something that we do on a as needed basis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl, for that. Is there any further questions for Carl? No, I will take it through to the resolution then, please. Resolution is that the report be received, that council notes the statutory public notice requirement under section 462 of the Local Government Act 1974 has been satisfied with this report being placed before council through the public meeting process. Point 3, that council declares the specified private drain through lot 11 DP 338147 block X YME SD at Havel Drive to be a public drain in accordance with section 462 of the Local Government Act 1974. And point 4 being that the drain is subject to a registered private drain certificate under section 461 of the Local Government Act 1974. The council's chief executive notifies Land Information New Zealand so the relevant title records can be updated to show that the drain has become public. Now, move for a seconder, please, councillors. Councillor Walker, thank you very much. I'm happy to second. Or Councillor Burgess, happy to second. All in favour? Councillor Maitland, do you
I'm a bit on the fence there.
not wanting to vote?
No.
Abstain for voting.
Abstain.
Right, moving on to the electoral system. Thank you, Carl, very much for that. Thank you for that, it's brilliant. Electoral system and Di, Quality Assurance Manager, and Renisha, Principal Communications Advisor, joining us at the table. Welcome, Tam.
Thank you, Chair.
And we will head straight over to you, Di.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to take the report as read, but we've just got a couple of things we'd like to highlight. So the electoral system option, a decision by local authority must be made by the 12th of September if a council wishes to change the electoral system for the next 2 training elections. It's not mandatory. Council can choose to do nothing. The status quo will continue to apply unless changed by a council resolution or a poll of electors. We do need to highlight the public notice of the right of electors to demand a poll must be published by the 19th of September. The public notice is mandatory whether the council passes a resolution or not. And should council choose to continue as council had already passed a resolution on the 24th of August 2023 to continue to use the first past the post electoral system. If council wish to alter or revoke that resolution, then there would need to be a process followed in accordance with standing orders, which is essentially a notice of motion delivered to the CE, and we would need to hold an extraordinary council meeting to consider the notice of motion. Thank you.
Just through the chair as well, just the reason the report came forward as well is that due to the chief executive's policy of having no surprises. So this is something that is up for renewal. We don't necessarily have to do anything, which hopefully was explained this morning, but also as well that given to give the current council opportunity because the decision was made under the last triennium. So that's the reason this came forward. That's just highlighted. We don't necessarily have to do anything. It's just being brought to your attention so you can decide whether or not you wish to do anything.
So, yeah, understand that we have to make a decision on this because the law, however, it's all rather academic. Because we're not going to be around.
That's true.
Right, isn't it? Status quo.
Yeah. Yes, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I mean, I quite like this SUV, but reality is the other 2 councils are currently using FPP. Unless we get some indication that they have the appetite to change, then we should probably just keep the consistency because probably it's going to be there's a possibility of just one election. I guess one question might be, we don't know how, we don't know how it looks. Because I feel like in multi-council awards, STV is quite a good bit of system, but possibly we might just have single council awards with such a big region to cover in any future government's arrangements. So I'd probably support staying with FPP until we have some clarity on it.
And I agree with that too. I mean, it's the STV, I see that being the system potentially going forward with one council. But at the moment, it's why change what's there? We don't know what the finite time is on councillors we like today.
You let us be sensible, not like them.
Yeah, yes. Councillor Martin.
Through the chair, Diane, when was it reviewed last by council? What year did you say? 2023?
24th of August 2023.
Yes. So does that have the restriction that it was 2 election periods?
That was, yeah.
So that would be 26 and 29.
29.
Yes.
Yes.
Any decision here, it could be moved because it might be 2031. Yeah.
We won't be here, so.
Carry on.
That's off the morning.
Right, so consensus around the table.
Doing that.
Do nothing. Councillor Collette.
Through your worship, just a comment, because this is a repeat of what happened in the last term. We got slapped with this report presented to council to make at that time, a significant decision on the whole voting system. And once again, this report has no analysis whatsoever. It's just purely a recommendation based on it being easy and familiar. If we are going to vote on it today, I'm actually quite keen to just vote for STV. It's a more democratic process. I think my preference would be to vote for STV or just leave the report and not vote.
Yes, we did. We just had a workshop with Election NZ before this meeting on the whole process and options.
Yeah. I sat there. That's how can you possibly digest the intricacies of STV versus FBP in a 30-minute presentation just before the start of a council meeting when you've got to make a decision on it? I just don't think that's adequate.
Councillor Bevan.
I think that the moving to STV might be a sensible option, and I think that we should leave that and have that conversation as part of our local government reform opportunity there. I think that the issue at the moment for me is the considerable extra added cost it puts on the ratepayers.
Yeah.
There's a lot more, you have to educate 30% more resource to actually run that voting system, which creates additional cost.
It'll cost more than going out to consult on the policy.
It's more complex.
What costs for democracy?
Well, I think just further to that, I think we've been in this meeting penny pinching about consulting on policies, and I think this is much more substantial than that in terms of cost to the ratepayer.
Okay. Consensus, councillors? Are you happy to go to the vote on the notes are that the report be received, that council continue to use first past the post voting system for the 2028 and 2031 local elections? Be there. Is everybody happy to go to the vote on that? Right, so move and second, please, that we resolve both report be received and that council continue the first past the post voting system with 2028, 2031 local elections. Do I have a move and a second, please? Councillor Madeira? Councillor Mann, second it. Thank you very much. And show of hands, please, all in favour? Against? Abstention? Okay, 2 against, 1 abstained, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, very much for that. Yes, so next on the agenda, thanks, Di and Relish for that, greatly appreciate it. So there's nothing on the administrative resolutions, so we will resolve to go into the public excluded. Do I have a move for a second to please resolve the council move into such section at 3:25 p.m. Move for a second, please. So move, go over second, please. Councillor Bevan, thank you very much. Right, so we will take, we'll disconnect from that live stream. Councillors, you'll be